The day I got the notice taped to my front door, I was ankle-deep in engine grease, halfway through restoring the outboard on my old fishing boat. My name's Everett Vaughn, retired machinist, proud boat owner, and apparently, according to the HOA now, a violator of community standards. I peeled the paper off and read it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Notice of violation. Boat trailers are prohibited in driveways. Remove within 72 hours or face fines. I looked over at my trailer, sitting neatly on the side of my own driveway in front of my own garage, not blocking a single soul. I'd lived in this lakeside neighborhood for 12 years without a single complaint. Suddenly, my trailer was a community threat. Enter Zelda Whitmore. Zelda, the HOA president, had the kind of voice that could chip paint off a wall and a haircut that looked like it had been shaped with a salad bowl. She marched up to my property line like she was storming the beaches of Normandy. "Everett," she barked, arms crossed so tight her knuckles turned white, "that trailer is an eyesore. It's in violation of Article 16, Section B. "Zelda," I said, wiping my hands on a rag, "that trailer's been right there for 3 years. No one said a word." "There's a new interpretation now," she sniffed. "We've decided to enforce it more strictly." "You've got 3 days. I leaned on the fence and looked her square in the eyes. "You picked the wrong guy, Zelda. That trailer's not going anywhere." She narrowed her eyes like I just kicked her poodle. "Then we'll deal with this formally. Have a nice day." But that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, I woke up to find a bright orange violation sticker slapped on my garage door. 2 hours later, I got an email from the HOA treasurer claiming I now owed $300 in fines. I knew Zelda had it out for me. She always acted like the lake belonged to her, especially since most of the HOA board kept their boats in the private marina at the far end of the cove. The kicker: that marina had been built long before I moved in, and it ran right along the edge of my backyard property. That's when the idea hit me. I pulled out the original property deed, blew the dust off, and started reading. Then I called the county recorder's office. What I found made me sit back and just whistle. The entire marina, every dock, piling, and slip was sitting on land I owned. Not HOA land. Not public land. Mine. Some previous owner must have approved the dock years ago without transferring any rights, and no one ever caught it, but I had proof. Legal, survey-stamped, notarized proof. So instead of moving my trailer, I quietly installed 3 brand new security cameras facing the marina. Then I sat back on my porch with a coffee and waited for Zelda to push just a little too far. She didn't disappoint. By day 3, she came back with 2 board members and a clipboard. "You've been warned, Everett," she said. "The board has voted. We're escalating this to collections." I didn't say a word. I just reached into my folder and handed her a copy of my property survey, her nose scrunched like she'd just bitten a lemon. "You might want to read that before you start barking orders," I said. "What is this?" she snapped. "That," I said, "is proof that your precious marina is built entirely on my land. Every boat slip you rent out, every dock permit you file, that's all sitting on my property." Zelda's jaw dropped. One of the board members actually stepped back like he didn't want to be in the blast radius. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice cracked. "Nope. County records confirmed it yesterday, and I've got every right to revoke access, including yours." Her face turned beet red. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," I said, stepping forward. "You want me to move my boat trailer? Fine. But if I do, I'm locking the gate to the marina, and you can explain to 30 homeowners why their boats are stuck offshore." Zelda didn't respond. She just stood there, mouth twitching, eyes darting between the paper and the marina like she was watching her little HOA empire sink. Zelda didn't return for 2 days. In the meantime, I paid a visit to the county zoning office. I wasn't just trying to rattle cages, I wanted everything airtight. The clerk, a wiry man with a habit of tapping his pen against his glasses, took one look at the parcel records and raised his eyebrows. "You're saying the HOA built a marina without an easement?" They've been leasing slips to other residents for years, I said. No easement, no lease agreement, nothing filed. He tapped his keyboard for a few minutes, narrowed his eyes at the screen, and printed off a copy of the subdivision's original plat map. Sure enough, the marina was a ghost, no permits, no recorded right of use. You should talk to a real estate attorney, he said. They're squatting on your land. By the time I got home, an email from Zelda was already waiting. It had a more polite tone, almost suspiciously polite, but it still included a warning about continued non-compliance and a threat of lien placement. I didn't respond. Instead, I placed a call to a local attorney named Janice Rourke, someone I'd worked with a few years back during a property boundary dispute with a neighbor. Janice reviewed the documents, maps, and permit history over the course of an afternoon. When we spoke that evening, she didn't mince words. They've got no legal standing to use that marina. If they've been collecting money for dock use, that's unauthorized commercial activity on private land. You've got enough here to file an injunction. I nodded slowly. Let's hold fire for now. I want to give them one last chance to walk away clean. Early Saturday morning, I walked past the marina with a clipboard in hand. I jotted down every slip number, every boat registration I could see, and the names stenciled on every transom. Then I knocked on a few doors. Most of the folks were surprised to see me, cautious even. But once I explained what was happening, how the HOA had built their precious marina on my soil without a scrap of permission, the mood shifted. Wait, said one man, a retired postal worker named Louis. You're telling me I've been paying Zelda a monthly fee to use your property? Every check you've written to the HOA for that slip went to them, not one dime to me, and I never gave them permission. He stared out at the water, then back at me. That's fraud. Exactly. By mid-morning, I had signatures from 13 residents who agreed to submit written complaints to the county. Not everyone was on board. Some folks were too afraid of rocking the boat, no pun intended, but the ones who signed were furious. I made copies of everything and dropped them off with Janice. That afternoon, the HOA held an emergency board meeting in the clubhouse. I wasn't invited, but I sat on the public bench outside anyway, reading a dog-eared copy of a marine engine manual. After about an hour, the glass doors burst open and Zelda stormed out, trailed by the vice president, a nervous-looking man named Curtis who always seemed to be caught between panic and indigestion. This is extortion, Zelda hissed the moment she saw me. No, I said without looking up. Extortion would be threatening to fine someone unless they give you money for something you don't own, which, incidentally, is exactly what you've been doing. Curtis cleared his throat. Everett, we'd like to resolve this amicably. Maybe we can reach a private agreement regarding the marina, some kind of lease or shared use. Too late for that, I said, closing the manual. You've been charging people for access to my land. You've issued fines, threats, and now you're talking about liens. That's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud. Zelda's eyes darted to the security camera mounted above the clubhouse door. You wouldn't go public with this, she said. You'd tank property values. People would blame you. I've already gone public, just not the way you think, I said. The county's opening an investigation. And Janice filed the injunction this morning. Zelda looked like she'd swallowed a fistful of thumbtacks. At dawn the next day, code enforcement officers showed up. 2 unmarked SUVs pulled into the neighborhood, and uniformed officials began photographing the marina and taking measurements. One of the officers approached me on the sidewalk. You're Everett Vaughn. That's right. We've confirmed the parcel boundaries. This entire dock system, including the access ramp, crosses onto your property. There's no record of a permit or easement. You're not surprised. Not even a little, he said. But the county DA might be. Around noon, the police arrived, not the local beat cops. They sent out detectives. According to them, the county had opened a criminal probe into the HOA's financial practices. They'd been collecting thousands in slip fees annually, none of it declared, no tax filings, no permits, and all of it on someone else's land. I watched from my porch as the detectives entered the HOA office with a warrant. Boxes of documents came out. So did a hard drive and a laptop. Zelda wasn't home when they arrived, but her husband tried to stall them by claiming this was all some big misunderstanding. The lead detective didn't even flinch. By sunset, the marina was closed. Sawhorses and red tape blocked the access ramp. A printed notice was stapled to the post. Closed pending legal review. You could hear the arguing from 3 blocks away as residents came down to find out their boats were essentially stranded. Curtis showed up at my porch again later that night, arms limp at his sides. "Look," he said quietly, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they built it on your land. I thought it had all been grandfathered in." "Then you should have asked for the documents before voting on fines." He hung his head. "Zelda's going to be indicted, isn't she?" "Probably," I said. "And if the DA plays it right, she won't be the only one." The next board meeting was held in the high school auditorium because the clubhouse had been sealed as evidence. Over 60 residents showed up. The atmosphere was tense. People wanted answers, and there were none to give. Zelda was notably absent. Rumor had it her lawyer had advised her not to appear. I stood up with a letter in hand. "This is a formal declaration revoking all access to the marina from this point forward. No lease, no negotiation. You built it illegally. You profited from it. Now you can fish from shore like the rest of us." There was a pause. Then someone clapped. Then another. And another. Within a week, the HOA board had resigned en masse. A special election was called, and a new slate of candidates ran on a transparency-first platform. I didn't run, but I did agree to be an advisor to the new board. My first recommendation: hire a licensed surveyor and verify every HOA-maintained structure in the neighborhood. Turned out the playground and half of the tennis court were also sitting partially on private parcels. A quiet settlement was reached with those homeowners, this time with proper documentation. No more threats, no more fines, and as for my boat trailer still sitting in my driveway, no one's touched it since. By Tuesday morning, the marina was completely lifeless, boats bobbing gently, no footsteps on the dock, no voices echoing across the water. Just the occasional sound of rope tightening against a cleat in the wind. Every slip holder had been notified. Access was terminated. I wasn't celebrating. Yet. While Zelda had vanished into the background, the fallout had only begun. County investigators were now digging through years of HOA financial records, and the deeper they went, the uglier it got. I heard about it not from the news, but from a man named Pierce Holloway, a white-collar crimes investigator with the state's Attorney General's office. He showed up at my door wearing a Navy windbreaker and a face that looked like it hadn't cracked a smile since the Carter administration. "You're the one who exposed the unpermitted marina?" he asked, holding a legal pad. "That's me," I said, motioning him onto the porch. He sat, adjusted his cuffs, and glanced across the lawn toward the water. "Did you know they've collected over $400,000 in maintenance fees for that marina in the last 6 years? Not a single dollar declared on their nonprofit filings." I raised an eyebrow. "That explains the new clubhouse furniture." Pierce didn't laugh. "We're treating this as intentional misappropriation of funds. Several board members may face felony charges, not just Zelda." I figured as much. He flipped to a second page. "You ever see any contractors working down by the dock? Repairs, installations, anything that might have involved outside vendors. There was a crew out there last spring, took down the old ramp and replaced it with aluminum decking. Looked like a rush job. Did you see who paid them?" I nodded once. Curtis handed one of the workers an envelope. Cash. "I was repainting my deck rail and saw the whole thing." Pierce scribbled something. "You willing to submit a statement, as long as I don't have to wear a tie?" He cracked the faintest grin before standing. "You've done more than stir the pot, Mr. Vaughn. You may have broken a dam." After he left, I crossed the lawn and stopped at the edge of the dock. The caution tape fluttered in the breeze like some kind of warning flag. I knew things were far from over. The next day, a letter arrived by certified mail. It was from Zelda's attorney, some downtown firm with a name that sounded like a dinosaur exhibit. The letter claimed I had maliciously interfered with neighborhood operations and demanded that I cease any obstruction of community access to established amenities. I laughed out loud, right there at my kitchen counter. I drove straight to Janice's office and handed her the envelope. She read it, then leaned back in her chair, lips pressed into a thin line. "They're grasping. This is desperation wrapped in legalese. You revoked access to your land, that's your right. Their argument hinges on the marina being established legally, which it wasn't." She placed the letter down and tapped it once. "Want me to respond? Put it in language they can't spin." 2 days later, Janice's reply hit harder than a wrecking ball. Not only did she refute every claim in Zelda's letter, but she added a demand. A full audit of HOA finances, conducted by a third-party forensic accountant, or we'd file a civil suit on behalf of all affected homeowners. That's when the anonymous tips started. First, someone slid a manila envelope under Janice's office door. Inside were photocopies of internal HOA emails Zelda, Curtis, and 2 others discussing how to reallocate the marina fees to cover unrelated expenses. Landscaping, catered meetings, even a weekend retreat at a ski lodge in Beach Mountain. Janice handed the envelope straight to Pierce Holloway. Then came the video. A resident named Clara, quiet woman, mid-70s, lived 3 houses down, came knocking one morning with a flash drive. Turns out she'd been documenting HOA meetings for years, ever since Zelda tried to fine her for a bird feeder. "There's something you need to see," Clara said. The footage was grainy but clear enough. One clip showed Zelda laughing during a closed-door meeting. "If we tell them the marina's common property, they'll pay without asking questions," she said. "It's not like Everett's going to dig through the county archive." Another board member asked what would happen if someone did. Zelda shrugged. "Then we'll bury them in legal threats until they fold." Janice forwarded that clip to the state ag's office. Within 24 hours, subpoenas were issued. By the end of the week, 3 former board members were arrested for fraud, tax evasion, and falsifying nonprofit documents. Zelda turned herself in the following morning, escorted by her lawyer, wearing sunglasses like she was some kind of celebrity. Her mugshot was on the local paper's front page the next day. The new HOA board, finally free of the old regime, called for a full community meeting. This time, there was no clubhouse, just folding chairs set up in the community park. No podium, no microphone, just neighbors facing neighbors. An older woman named Sherry, the interim president, stood and addressed the crowd. "We failed to question the people we trusted, and Everett here," she pointed to me, "had the guts to hold them accountable. We owe him more than a thank you." I stood, hands in my jacket, and looked around. I didn't do it for praise, I just wanted to fix my boat in peace. That got a few chuckles. But then Louis, the postal worker who'd signed the first petition, raised his hand. "Everett, we've been talking. What if we bought the marina from you, legally, no tricks, just a proper agreement? We'd raise the funds ourselves." I looked out at the slips, now silent and empty. For a second, I considered saying no just out of principle. But these weren't the board members who'd tried to bully me. These were folks trying to put things right. "Draw up a proper lease," I said. "Annual review. No exclusivity, and every penny goes to maintenance." They applauded. Not wildly, not like a show, just a simple, grateful sound. As people packed up their chairs, Clara came over and handed me a small box. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled. "Just something we thought you'd appreciate." Inside was a custom engraved plaque. It read, "Everett Vaughn, Guardian of the Waterfront." I laughed quietly. "You all really didn't have to do this." "We know," she said. "But we wanted to." That night, I sat on my porch watching the moonlight ripple across the water. The dock was still closed, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. The shadow hanging over the neighborhood had lifted. The trailer was still in my driveway, untouched. The engine on the boat purred like a kitten after weeks of work. I had plans to take her out again come Saturday. First time in months. Then, as the crickets took over the night, I saw something else: a couple of teenagers walking up and down the neighborhood stapling flyers to mailboxes. I waved one over. "What's that?" I asked, nodding at the stack. He handed me a flyer. It read, "Community BBQ this Saturday. Celebrate the end of the HOA saga. Bring sides, bring stories." I chuckled. "Guess I'll bring the coleslaw." As he walked off, I glanced once more at the marina. Justice didn't always come fast, but when it arrived, it was thorough. And in this case, it came with barbecue. By Saturday morning, the park smelled like charcoal, sweet corn, and lilac trees. Folding tables lined the edge of the field, covered in crockpots, foil, wrapped trays, and mismatched plastic containers. The turnout was bigger than anyone expected. Nearly every household sent someone, even the residents who'd kept quiet during the HOA mess. No speeches, no ceremony. Just neighbors passing ribs and potato salad under strung lights and paper lanterns. I was halfway through a plate of deviled eggs when a man approached me with a cautious step and a clipboard tucked under his arm. He wore slacks, a pressed button down, and shoes too polished for a weekend cookout. "Mr. Vaughn," I stood and wiped my hands on a napkin. "That's me." He extended a leather wallet flipped open to a badge. "Special Agent Derek Mallory, State Revenue and Compliance Division." "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Long as they don't interrupt dessert. We stepped away from the tables, toward a quieter patch of grass. "We've been reviewing the financial trail connected to the HOA's Marina operation," he began. "What started as local fraud has expanded beyond that." I nodded, waiting. "There's evidence the former treasurer created a shell account under a fake maintenance vendor. Funds from the marina went directly into that account, then were used to purchase personal items, luxury appliances, airline tickets, even a timeshare in Arizona." "You saying this goes beyond Zelda?" "Far beyond," he said. "Curtis Walker's name is on 3 wire transfers tied to that shell account. We believe he was laundering funds out of state." He handed me a photo, a grainy image of Curtis at a Las Vegas ATM withdrawing cash. "I already gave my statement to the AG's investigator," I said. "What else do you need?" "Your permission to access the footage from the security cameras you installed facing the marina," he replied. "We believe some of the footage may show unauthorized dock rentals to non-residents. If they were leasing slips off the books, that's tax evasion and possibly unlawful commercial use of private land." "You'll get it," I said. "I keep everything on encrypted drives backed up weekly." Agent Mallory gave a short nod, jotted something on his clipboard, and disappeared into the crowd. I returned to my seat and picked up my fork again, only to find my chair occupied a young woman with a notepad and a press badge pinned to her jacket sleeve. "You Everett Vaughn?" she asked, glancing up from her notes. "You people ever show up before the fireworks?" she laughed. "I'm with the local paper, just covering the aftermath. Heard you knew the marina situation inside and out." "You heard right, but I'm not giving you a quote if you're just here to spin it. I'm more interested in how a community rebuilds," she said. "They've got a shot at something better now." "You lit the match." I shook my head. "I didn't light anything, I just uncovered a rotten foundation. They're the ones rebuilding it." She scratched something quickly onto her notepad. "Then let me ask this: what advice would you give to someone living under an HOA that's starting to show cracks?" I paused, then looked out across the park. Children were playing tag near the edge of the woods, and someone had started a guitar circle by the picnic benches. "Document everything. Read your bylaws, and don't let a clipboard and a title scare you into silence," I said. She nodded, stood, and left me with a half smile and a pen that said Piedmont Weekly. The next phase came faster than anyone expected. On Monday morning, federal agents executed a warrant at a storage unit registered to Curtis's brother-in-law. Inside, they found boxes of HOA records, including handwritten ledgers and backup flash drives. That same afternoon, the IRS announced a parallel investigation into undeclared income stretching back 8 years. The paper trail revealed falsified repair invoices, ghost contractors, and at least one offshore account. Curtis was arrested outside a golf course 30 miles away. He tried to tell the arresting officer he was just a volunteer, but the charges didn't care. He was booked for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit tax evasion, and unlawful misappropriation of nonprofit funds. A week later, Zelda's attorney negotiated a plea deal. She agreed to testify against the treasurer and 2 other board members in exchange for a reduced sentence and restitution payments. Her deposition stretched 6 hours and implicated nearly every decision made during her presidency. Nobody celebrated the arrests. No one gloated. The mood was more like what follows a storm: quiet, reflective, relieved. A month passed. The community began redrafting its bylaws with the help of a municipal legal team. Dues were frozen during the audit, and the temporary board operated under public oversight, with every meeting streamed online and archived. I was invited to serve as a non-voting advisor to the bylaw committee. I told them I'd only do it if the meetings were held outside, no more backroom decisions behind closed doors. They agreed. We rewrote the enforcement policies from scratch. No more anonymous complaints. No more fines without photographic evidence and third-party review. Homeowners could now vote on major expenditures, and the community's budget would be published quarterly, down to the last cent. As for the marina, the residents came together to create a non-profit cooperative. They held a fundraiser silent auction, raffle, the works, and raised enough to pay for a 20-year lease at fair market value, with annual renewals contingent on transparency and maintenance compliance. I signed the lease under a canopy in my backyard, with a notary present and 24 people clapping politely. It wasn't a victory lap. It was closure. One evening, Clara dropped by with a black photo album. She handed it to me without a word. Inside were pictures from the early days of the neighborhood dock construction, kids fishing off the pier, families at July 4th barbecues. On the last page was a photo of the marina, freshly built, with a handwritten caption, "Before the lies." She pointed at the empty space on the back cover. "I left that for you," she said. I took the album inside and slid a photo into the last sleeve, one I'd taken just the week before. It showed the marina under golden morning light, quiet boats lined up in clean order, a new sign at the entrance. Community-owned. Resident-led. Below it, I wrote, "After the truth." Weeks passed. The neighborhood grew quieter, but not in the cold, suspicious way it used to be. The quiet now was peaceful. People waved more. Little free libraries popped up on corners. One of the kids painted a mural on the side of the utility shed, bright blue sky, green trees, and a calm lake with a single dock stretching into the water. One afternoon, as I was tuning my boat motor, a new family stopped by. The father introduced himself as Nate, a high school biology teacher. His wife, Mia, worked at the local clinic. Their daughter, barefoot and covered in sidewalk chalk, pointed at the boat. "Is that real?" "Sure is," I said. "Want to see how the engine works?" She nodded eagerly, and I showed her the propeller shaft and the starter coil. Nate watched, smiling. "We heard about the HOA situation," he said. "Didn't scare us off. Then you're already ahead of most." He looked at the trailer beside the boat. "They really tried to fine you for that." "They tried a lot of things," I said. "Didn't work." He laughed. "Well, thanks for taking the hit for the rest of us." "Don't thank me, just stay involved. That's how you keep the termites out." As they walked off, I leaned back against the fence and looked over the lake. Justice hadn't come from yelling or threatening or posturing. It came from persistence. From reading the fine print. From refusing to be intimidated, the marina stood, not because power defended it, but because truth rebuilt it. And the boat trailer, still parked exactly where